The pipe burst like a gunshot in the dead of night, flooding my cramped Seattle apartment with icy water that soaked through the floorboards and straight into my dreams. I stumbled into the bathroom, barefoot and cursing, only to slip on the slick tile and crash down hard, the cold shock ripping a gasp from my throat that echoed off the walls like a cry for help I hadn't meant to make. There, in the flickering emergency light from my phone, I saw him, Richard, the plumber I'd called in desperation, already knee-deep in the mess, his strong hands wrenching at the valve, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that drowned out the chaos. That look. God, pinned me there on the floor, water lapping at my knees, my heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to break free. Richard didn't say a word at first, just extended a calloused hand, pulling me up with a grip that felt like an anchor in a storm. "Easy now," he murmured, his voice rough as gravel but warm underneath, like the first sip of coffee on a Pacific Northwest morning. And in that moment, as the water finally slowed to a drip, I knew my life had just sprung a leak I couldn't fix alone. I was 32, single for the third year running after my last breakup left me with a stack of regrets and a lease I couldn't afford to break. Seattle suited me in its brooding way, endless rain mirroring the quiet ache in my chest, the Space Needle piercing the clouds like a half-hearted promise. I worked as a graphic designer for a small firm downtown, churning out logos for craft breweries and indie bands, the kind of job that paid the bills but left my soul sketching invisible lines in the margins. David Ellis. That's me, average height, runner's build from those futile jogs along the waterfront, brown hair that never quite stayed put, and eyes that friends said held too much story for a guy who'd never quite told his own. The flood happened on a Thursday, the kind of night where the city hunkered down under sheets of rain, and I was elbow-deep in takeout lo mein when the rumble started. First, I thought it was thunder, but then the ceiling groaned, and water gushed from the light fixture in the bathroom like a biblical deluge. Panic clawed up my throat. I'd been meaning to call maintenance for weeks, but work had buried me. By midnight, with towels barricading the door and my socks squelching, I dialed the emergency line for Puget Sound Plumbing. Richard showed up at 1:17 a.m., toolkit in hand, rain dripping from his hoodie like he'd swum there. He was in his late 30s, broad-shouldered with a jawline shadowed by stubble. His flannel shirt rolled up to reveal forearms etched with faint tattoos, anchors and ropes, hints of a life spent wrestling the sea before trading it for pipes. "Richard Hale," he said, shaking my hand with that firm, no-nonsense grip, his green eyes scanning the damage like a general assessing a battlefield. "Looks like your supply line gave up the ghost." "Won't take long." I hovered in the doorway, offering weak jokes about my plumbing karma while he worked. The apartment smelled of damp plaster and his cologne, something woodsy, like cedar under rain. He laughed at my quips, a low rumble that vibrated through the floor, and when he finally shut off the flow, wiping sweat from his brow, he glanced up at me with that same piercing look from earlier. "You all right? Look like you took a header in here." "Yeah. Just a bruised ego and wet feet." I forced a grin, but my voice cracked, betraying the exhaustion. He nodded, like he saw right through it, and for a beat, the air thickened, charged with the unspoken weight of two strangers sharing a midnight crisis. He stayed longer than necessary, mopping up the remnants and advising on temporary fixes until morning. We talked about the relentless Seattle drizzle, how it mirrored the grind of blue-collar life versus my desk jockey world. He was from Tacoma originally, a Navy vet who'd settled into plumbing after his discharge, single too, Or so he let slip with a wry smile. Wife left me for an accountant. Said I smelled too much like solder and regret. His laugh was bitter, but his eyes softened when they met mine, lingering just a second too long. By 3 a.m., the crisis averted. He packed up, but not before scribbling his personal number on a receipt. Call if it acts up again. Or, if you need a beer. Guys like us gotta stick together in this town. He clapped my shoulder, the touch electric, and then he was gone, leaving me staring at the door, heart racing like I'd run a marathon. The next morning, sunlight pierced the clouds, a rare gift, and I texted him before coffee could cool. Beer still on the table? Surviving on dry socks here. His reply buzzed back instant. Tonight. 7 at the Alibi Room. Don't ghost me, Ellis. The Alibi Room was a dive in Capitol Hill. All exposed brick and craft IPAs. The kind of place where the queer crowd mingled with straight allies under neon signs that flickered like faulty memories. I arrived early, nerves jangling, nursing a hazy IPA while scanning the door. When Richard walked in, shaking off his jacket, heads turned not just for his build, but for the quiet confidence that filled the room like smoke. He spotted me, grinned that crooked smile, and slid into the booth opposite. We talked for hours, the conversation flowing like the beer. His stories of ship deployments off San Diego, the isolation of coming out in the military back when don't ask, don't tell was law. My confessions about failed apps on Grindr, the ache of wanting connection in a city that felt too vast. You ever feel like you're waiting for the right storm? He asked, his fingers tracing the condensation on his glass, close enough to mine that I could feel the heat. All the time, I admitted, and our eyes locked again, that pull from the night before igniting into something real, tangible. When he brushed my hand under the table, accidental, then not, I didn't pull away. The bar's hum faded, and for the first time in years, I felt seen, not just looked at. That night ended with a walk along Broadway, rain-slick streets reflecting the shop lights like scattered stars. At my door, he hesitated, then leaned in, his lips brushing mine soft and tentative, tasting of hops and hope. Good night, David, he whispered, and I watched him go, the city swallowing him whole, my world tilting on its axis. The weeks blurred into a rhythm I'd forgotten existed. Richard became the fixture in my life I'd craved. Dinners at my place where he'd cook salmon from Pike Place, his hands deft as they filleted the fish, sharing laughs over my botched attempts at sides. We'd hike Discovery Park on weekends, the salt air whipping our faces as we talked dreams. His of opening a small contracting business, mine of illustrating a graphic novel about lost boys finding their way. He opened up about the betrayal that scarred him, his ex-wife discovering his orientation during a drunken confession, the divorce that stripped him of everything but his truck and tools. I thought love meant hiding, he said one evening, our feet tangled on my couch, a Mariners game droning in the background. But with you, it's like breathing fresh air after years underwater. I shared my ghosts too. The college boyfriend who ghosted after coming out went viral in our small town. The family back in Ohio who'd stopped calling when I stopped pretending. In Richard's arms, those wounds felt like old ink, fading under the warmth of his touch, his quiet strength. But cracks appeared, subtle at first. Late calls he'd take in the other room, voice low and guarded. Just work, he'd say, but his eyes would dart away. I pushed it down, chalking it up to my insecurities, the fear that good things in my life always rusted out. One crisp October afternoon, 3 months in, we drove to the coast, ocean shores, where the waves crashed like unanswered questions. We walked the beach, boots sinking in wet sand, his arm around my waist as gulls wheeled overhead. "Marry me?" he joked, skipping a stone across the surf. "Or at least, let's make this official. No more solo apartments." My heart soared, words tumbling out in a yes that tasted like forever. That night, in a roadside motel with the ocean roaring outside, we made promises, not with rings, but with whispered vulnerabilities, bodies entwined in the kind of intimacy that healed without demanding. Back in Seattle, life deepened. He met my friends at a queer trivia night in the U District, charming them with tales of plumbing mishaps turned heroic. I tagged along to his sister's barbecue in Kent, where she hugged me fierce and said, "He smiles different now. Because of you." For the first time, I pictured a future, a house with a view of the Sound, mornings tangled in sheets, evenings building something lasting from the ruins of what came before. But betrayal brews in the quiet hours. It started with a forgotten jacket at my place. Inside pocket, a crumpled photo of Richard with a man I didn't recognize. Arms slung casual, smiles too intimate for brothers. "Who's this?" I asked lightly when he came over, holding it out. His face drained of color. "Old Navy buddy." Nothing, but the lie hung heavy, and that night, sleep evaded us both. The doubts snowballed. I noticed the texts, late-night pings from Mark, the way Richard's shoulders tensed. One evening, after he'd bailed on our plans for an emergency job, I drove to his place unannounced, a bottle of wine as peace offering. His truck was there, lights on, and through the blinds, I saw them, Richard and that man from the photo, tangled on the couch, lips locked in a kiss that shattered me like glass underfoot. I didn't knock, didn't scream, just turned and walked into the rain, the wine bottle slipping from numb fingers to smash on the curb. Betrayal tasted like salt and rust, the kind that corrodes from the inside. Days blurred into a fog. I ghosted his calls, threw myself into work until my eyes burned, ran the waterfront paths until my lungs screamed. Friends rallied brunches at Elliott Bay Book Company, where they'd ply me with lattes and platitudes, but the hollow in my chest echoed louder than their words. He showed up at my door a week later, eyes red-rimmed, flannel rumpled like he'd slept in it. "David, please. Let me explain." Rain pelted the awning above, mirroring the storm in his voice. I let him in, arms crossed like armor. The apartment still smelled of him, cedar and coffee, and it twisted the knife. "Who is he?" "Richard. And don't lie this time. Mark was his ex. The one from before the wife. The one who'd ended things when Richard chose the closet over courage. They'd reconnected at a vet support group, just talking, until it wasn't. I panicked," Richard confessed, voice breaking. "You make me want everything, and it scared me shitless." I thought, if I dipped back, it'd prove I could handle it. But it was a lie. "You're the truth." Anger surged, hot and righteous. "You fixed my pipe, then flooded my heart. How do I trust that won't burst again?" Words flew, accusations of cowardice, pleas for honesty, until exhaustion claimed us, slumped on the floor where it all began, tears mingling with the remnants of that first flood. We didn't end it that night. Instead, We clawed toward something rawer, therapy sessions in a Belltown office, where a soft-spoken counselor unpacked our baggage like fragile heirlooms. Richard quit the group, blocked the number, showed up daily with coffee and apologies etched in every line of his face. I learned his fears of abandonment, of failing the man he loved, mirrored mine, two sailors navigating the same treacherous waters. Winter gripped Seattle, holidays looming like unanswered letters. We decorated my tree with mismatched ornaments, his navy insignia beside my childhood star, a fragile bridge. On Christmas Eve, snow dusting the city, a rarity, he knelt by the fire we'd kindled, not with a ring, but with a key to his place. "No more halves," he said, voice steady. "All in, or nothing." I took it, fingers trembling, and pulled him close. The kiss was salt-stung, redemption in the press of lips, a vow forged in the fire of what we'd almost lost. Spring thawed the sound, and with it, Richard's business took off, Hail Home Solutions, with me designing the logo, a stylized anchor entwined with pipes, symbol of steady repair. We moved into a Craftsman in Fremont, walls echoing with laughter, nights wrapped in each other, building a life from blueprints of pain. But healing isn't linear. Doubts whispered on bad days, echoes of betrayal testing the seams. One April morning, as cherry blossoms rained petals on our porch, I found him staring at his phone, face ashen. "Mark's back in town. Wants to talk closure." The old wound throbbed. "Go," I said, voice steel despite the quake. "But come home to me." He did, hours later, collapsing into my arms with a story of boundaries drawn, ghosts exorcised. "You're my harbor, David. Always. In the end, love isn't the absence of storms. It's the choice to weather them, hands clasped against the gale. We stand together now, two men remade by flood and fire, in a city that rains mercy on the worthy. And on quiet nights, when the pipes hum steady, I remember, sometimes, the break is where the real fixing begins. Yet, as summer unfurled its lazy heat over the Puget Sound, the undercurrents of our story pulled harder, revealing depths we'd only skimmed. It was June, the solstice sun hanging late in the sky, turning the canals of Fremont into ribbons of gold. Richard and I had settled into a routine that felt like grace. Mornings where he'd wake me with kisses trailing down my spine, coffee brewing as I sketched at the kitchen table. His business was booming, jobs stacking up from Ballard to Bellevue, and I'd taken on freelance gigs that let me breathe, my graphic novel inching from dream to draft. But peace, I've learned, is the prelude to the next wave. It started with a letter, innocuous in its cream envelope, slipped under our door while we were out at the Fremont Fair. Richard found it that evening, flipping burgers on the deck, his face paling as he read. "From my sister," he said, folding it away too quickly. "Family stuff." I didn't press. Trust is a muscle, flex daily, but the seed lodged. Later, in bed, his snores ragged, I slipped out and unfolded the note in the kitchen light. Emily's handwriting, looping and urgent. "Rich, Dad's sick. Cancer. Come home to Tacoma before it's too late. And bring David. We're ready to meet him properly. Love, M." My stomach nodded. Richard's family, distant shores, fraught with the history of his closeted youth. He'd spoken of them in fragments. A stern father, A Navy captain retired to a life of golf and grudges. A mother who'd baked pies but never questioned the silences. Emily, the bridge builder. They'd known about the divorce, the coming out, but me, I was the variable, the uncharted. The next morning, over eggs and the Seattle Times, I broached it. Your dad's sick. Why hide it? He sighed, fork pausing midair. It's complicated. Dad. He wasn't there for me when I needed him most. After the military, when I told them I was gay, it was radio silence for years. Now this feels like a summons, not an invitation. But it's family, I said softly, reaching for his hand. And you're stronger now. We are. He searched my eyes. That green gaze stormy. You'd come? Face the firing squad with me? For you? Anywhere. The drive to Tacoma was a 3-hour ribbon of highway. Evergreens blurring past as indie folk played low on the radio. Richard's grip on the wheel tightened near Olympia, his knee bouncing to an unheard rhythm. I kept the conversation light. Tales of my Ohio upbringing. The awkward Thanksgiving where my aunt asked if I was bringing a friend, but tension coiled like fog off the inlet. Emily met us at the door of their modest rancher, hugging Richard fierce before turning to me with a warmth that disarmed. David, right? The one who's got my brother grinning like a fool. Inside, the house smelled of lemon polish and simmering stew. Photos lining the walls. Richard as a gap-toothed kid in sailor whites. Emily in prom finery. His mother enveloped me next. Her embrace bony but genuine. We've heard so much. Sit. Eat. But the elephant loomed in the living room. Propped in his recliner, Captain Hale. Gaunt under a mariner's cap. Oxygen tube snaking to his nose. His eyes, faded blue, fixed on Richard with a mix of pride and regret. Son, the word rasped out, heavy as anchor chain. Richard crossed the room, kneeling beside him, their hands clasping in a grip that trembled. Dad. We're here. The conversation stuttered at first. Small talk about the mariner's dismal season, the neighbor's new boat, until Emily steered it deeper. Dad's got stage 3. Prostate. Chemo's rough, but he's fighting. Her voice cracked, and Richard's jaw set. The boy who'd lost his father to duty now facing the man undone by time. Over dinner, stories spilled. The captain's deployments. Letters home that arrived like lifelines. Richard's rebellious teen years. Sneaking beers at the marina. Dreaming of escape. I stayed quiet. A steady presence at Richard's side. My hand on his thigh under the table. A silent anchor. Later, as stars pricked the Tacoma sky, the captain called Richard to the den. I lingered in the hall, heart pounding, catching fragments. Proud of you, boy. For serving. For being brave. A pause, thick as smoke. Wish I'd said it sooner. About you. All of it. Richard emerged, eyes glistening, and pulled me into the guest room. He apologized. He whispered against my neck. For the silence. Said he loves me. No caveats. We made love that night. Slow and reverent. The house creaking around us like a ship finding its keel. In his arms, I felt the weight lift. Our bond forged stronger in the crucible of forgiveness. But family tides turn swift. 2 weeks later, back in Seattle, another letter arrived, this one from the captain's lawyer, outlining the will. Richard read it aloud, voice hollow, assets divided, but a codicil naming Emily executor. with stipulations for Richard's lifestyle choices, affecting a trust fund for traditional family. Betrayal, again not from Richard, but from the ghost of expectations. He said he accepted me, Richard raged, crumpling the paper. It's a goddamn leash. I held him as fury gave way to grief. The man I'd fallen for cracking under the weight of conditional love. It's not you, I murmured. It's their fear. Walk away from it. We build our own legacy. He did, signing over the fund to Emily for her kids, a quiet act of severance. But the scar lingered, deepening the chasm between blood and chosen family. Summer waned, festivals lighting the city, Pride in June, a riot of rainbows where we marched hand in hand, Richard's laugh booming over the cheers. This, he shouted over the bass, this is home. Yet, in the quiet aftermath, doubts crept. Was I enough to fill the voids his past carved? The climax crashed in August, heat wave baking the asphalt as Richard landed a big contract, renovating a historic Queen and Victorian. Excitement buzzed. It was his breakout, the step toward that business dream. I helped with designs, late nights poring over blueprints, our fingers smudged with ink and possibility. Then, the call. A subcontractor bailed. Deadlines loomed, and Richard vanished into 16-hour days. Texts grew sparse. Dinners solo. Just this once, he'd say, kissing my forehead before collapsing into bed, snoring through my unspoken fears. One midnight, I woke to his phone buzzing, Mark's name flashing. Heart in throat. I glanced. Miss you. Coffee? For old times. The room spun. Trust. That fragile pipe. Burst anew. When he stirred, I confronted him, voice steel. Mark again. What's the play here? Richard, sabotage by X. He bolted up, denial flashing to guilt. It was nothing. He reached out after Tacoma, said he heard about Dad. I told him to back off, but you didn't block him. Again, the words hung, accusatory. Am I fighting shadows forever? The argument escalated, voices rising over the hum of the AC, his defenses of stress, my litany of patterns, the betrayal cycle spinning vicious. I love you, he roared, slamming a fist on the dresser. Why can't that be enough? Because love without trust is just a pretty leak. I shot back, tears hot. I stormed out, driving aimless through the neon-veined night, ending at Gasworks Park, the old silos silhouetted against the moon like sentinels of ruin. Dawn found me there, phone silent, resolve hardening. This wasn't hate. It was the raw edge of care, demanding better. He found me at sunrise, coffee in hand, eyes hollow. I blocked him. For good. And I quit the job if it means losing you. His voice broke, kneeling in the dew-wet grass. Teach me how to be the man you deserve. Please. We rebuilt from there, brick by painful brick. Weekly check-ins. No more secrets. A couple's retreat in the Olympics where hikes turned to heart-to-hearts under ancient cedars. Richard learned vulnerability wasn't weakness. I learned grace wasn't blindness. Fall painted the city in fire, leaves crunching underfoot as we hosted our first joint Thanksgiving. Friends and Emily. No ghosts invited. Laughter filled the house. Toasts to second chances. In the kitchen, washing dishes side by side, Richard turned to me, suds on his nose. You're my surprise, David. Every day, and in that moment, With the rain pattering the window like applause, I believed him. Our story wasn't flawless, but it was ours, patched, pressure-tested, flowing true. As autumn deepened, the rains returned with vengeance, turning Seattle into a watercolor of grays and greens. Our home in Fremont became a sanctuary, walls hung with Richard's salvaged nautical charts and my evolving illustrations, scenes of two figures against stormy seas, hands linked. The betrayal's echo faded to a dull hum, replaced by the steady drip of normalcy. Shared grocery runs to the co-op, where we'd debate kale versus collards, movie nights with takeout foe, his head on my lap as credits rolled. But life, that relentless plumber, always has one more twist. November brought word from Emily. The captain's condition had worsened. Hospice now. Richard's face crumpled over the phone. The strong man I'd met in a flood reduced to whispers. He wants to see us. One last time. The drive south was somber, wipers slashing the downpour, Richard's hand heavy in mine. Tacoma greeted us with leaden skies, the rancher dimmed by drawn curtains. Inside, the air was thick with morphine and memories. The captain lay frail in his bed, skin translucent, but his eyes sharpened at our entrance. Boys, the word croaked out, inclusive, a bridge extended. Richard sat first, I beside him, our thighs pressing solidarity. Dad, Richard's voice thickened. We're here. Talk flowed halting. Regrets aired like laundry. The captain admitting his rigid code had cost him a son's openness. I was scared, he rasped, of what folks would say. But seeing you now, with David, it's right. You're good men. Tears traced Richard's cheeks. Mine too. As hands joined in a circle, father, son, lover, a trinity mending. Emily snapped a photo, her smile watery. For the album, we stayed the week, rotating vigils, sharing stories by the fire. I read to the captain from my novel draft, voices rising and falling like tides. He chuckled at the plucky protagonist, a sailor finding love amid mutiny. Reminds me of you too, he murmured. In those hours, I glimpsed the boy Richard had been, the father he'd longed for, and the man we'd become together, flawed, but forging ahead. The end came gently, a Sunday dawn when the captain slipped away, hand in Richard's, Emily and I flanking. Grief hit like a squall, raw and unrelenting, but in its wake, clearing. At the memorial, a simple affair at the marina, bagpipes keening over the water. Richard spoke, voice steady. He taught me duty. You all teach me love. Eyes met mine across the crowd, a vow renewed. Back home, winter's grip tightened, holidays a blur of tinsel and toasts. We hosted a solstice party, lanterns glowing on the deck, friends toasting, to leaks fixed and hearts mended. Richard pulled me aside mid-laugh, breath warm against my ear. Marry me. For real this time. My yes was a breath. Promise. The ring he slipped on simple silver, engraved with coordinates of that ocean shore's beach. Spring 2026 bloomed defiant, tulips thrusting through soil like hopes unearthed. Richard's business thrived. Hail Home Solutions now a team of 5, me handling branding. We planned the wedding small, on a ferry chugging the sound, vows exchanged under gulls' cries. But conflict simmers eternal. Midway through preparations, a ghost resurfaced, not Mark, but Richard's past self. Doubts dredged by the captain's will reading. Emily called. Voice tight. There's a clause. Dad left a letter for Richard, private. About protecting the family name. Homophobic undertones. He reconsidered at the end. But the words. Richard read it alone. Emerging pale. The paper shredded in his fist. He loved me, but part of him always feared. Said marriage to a man might tarnish the Hale legacy. Even in apology. Rage boiled in me. Protective. Burn it. It's not your truth. But it festered. Richard withdrawing into work. Snapping at small things, the unmade bed. My late nights sketching. Am I enough? I asked one evening. Rain lashing the windows. Or is his shadow always gonna leak in? He deflated, pulling me close. You're everything. This is poison. Not mine. We talked till dawn. Unpacking the toxicity. Vowing to honor the good while discarding the rot. The climax crested in May. Wedding Eve. Rehearsal dinner at a waterfront bistro. Emily toasting us with tears. To brothers in arms. And loves that endure. Laughter flowed. But Richard's smile strained. Phone buzzing ignored. Later. At home. It erupted. It's nothing. He lied when I pressed. But his eyes betrayed. I snatched the phone. Mark. Again. Texting coordinates to a bar in Tacoma. Closure meeting? Screw that. The fight was cataclysmic. Words weapons. My accusations of recidivism. His defenses crumbling to sobs. I didn't go, but yeah. I thought about it for a second. To prove I'm over it. Stupid. David. I'm scared of forever. Of failing you like he failed me. Paste. Heart fracturing. Then end it. If doubt's your plumber, fix it or flood us out. He dropped to knees, grasping my hands. Don't. I choose you. Every broken pipe, every storm, rain thundered approval as we clung. The betrayal not his infidelity, but the vulnerability of trust, demanding we rebuild. Higher, stronger. Dawn brought clarity. We canceled the ferry, eloped instead at City Hall, Emily and two friends witnessing. Vows simple. I fix what breaks. With you. Rings exchanged. We danced in the rain-slick street. Free. Summer healed. Vacations to the San Juans, kayaking inlets. Nights under stars. Richard's business hit a milestone. A feature in Seattle met. I sold my novel to a small press. Dedication. To the man who plumbed my depths. Yet, humanism whispers. No ending tidy, but growth eternal. One October Eve. As leaves turned, Richard confessed a final shadow, therapy revelations of his own abandonment fears. Rooted deep. I betrayed us by doubting. But loving you? That's my redemption. I kissed his temple. And mine. In America's vast tapestry, rain-kissed cities, resilient hearts, our story unfolds, not as fairy tale, but testament. Love, the ultimate repair, flows through cracks, mending what time tears asunder. The years that followed wove us tighter, threads of trial and triumph stitching a tapestry uniquely ours. By 2028, our Fremont craftsman had evolved. A studio edition for my illustrations, a workshop for Richard's prototypes of eco-friendly fixtures, his passion project blending plumbing with sustainability. Seattle pulsed around us, a city of reinvention, tech booms birthing coffee empires, pride parades swelling with newfound allies, the sound ever a mirror to our moods. Richard's business, now Hale and Hart, My surname added as partner, contracted for green retrofits, earning nods from city council. I published my second book, a memoir disguised as fiction. Leaky lines, chronicling our flood-born love. Reviews praised its raw American grit. Signings drawing queer youth hungry for hope. But prosperity invites peril. A rival firm, Apex Plumbing, poached clients with undercuts and whispers. Rumors of Richard's unstable personal life from an anonymous tip. Stress etched his face, sleep evading as bids piled up. "It's sabotage," he growled one night, papers strewn like wreckage. "And I think I know who, Mark. The ghost. Relocated to Seattle for a construction gig, nursing grudges from afar." Richard confronted him at an industry mixer in Pioneer Square, me in tow for moral ballast. The bar thrummed with clinking glasses, suits mingling under Edison bulbs. Mark, still handsome, sharper edges now, spotted us, smirk faltering. "Rich. David. Cozy. Cut the shit," Richard said, voice low thunder. "The leaks to Apex? You're doing." Mark's laugh was hollow. "Jealousy? Please. Just business. You got the fairy tale, I got the fallout." Words escalated, bar noise fading as I stepped in, hand on Richard's arm. "This ends now. Walk away, Mark. We're done plumbing your past." He did, tail between legs. But the damage lingered, lost contracts. Richard's confidence cracked. Nights, he'd pace the deck, staring at the canal's black ribbon. "Am I the villain here, dragging you through my messes?" I joined him, blanket draped. "Villains don't fight for redemption. You're the hero, babe. Flawed, but fierce." Therapy doubled down. Sessions unpacking sabotage's roots. Mark as symptom of Richard's internalized shame. The captain's legacy. Progress was glacial, but glacial moves mountains. Climax brewed that fall. Apex's bid war peaking at a city hall presentation. Richard pitched our green line solar-heated pipes, rainwater systems voice steady, slides gleaming with my designs. Midway, a heckler from Apex rose. "Hale's got history. Unreliable. Ask his exes." Gasps rippled. Richard froze, mic trembling. My heart seized, betrayal public now, a spotlight on scars. But he straightened, green eyes flashing. "History? Yeah. I've got divorces, doubts, a dad who couldn't love fully. But I've got a husband who taught me trust, a team that builds not breaks. Judge me on that." Applause erupted, council awarding us the contract. Backstage, he collapsed against me, sobs racking. "I did it. For us." We celebrated at home, champagne fizzing as rain drummed approval. That night, lovemaking was fervent, a reclaiming bodies mapping forgiveness, whispers vowing endurance. Winter brought quiet joys, adopting a rescue mutt, Luna, her wagging tail a metronome of normalcy. Holidays with Emily's growing family, tots clambering over Uncle David and Uncle Rich. The captain's shadow, honored in a garden memorial, roses blooming defiant. Spring 2029 tested anew. I landed a fellowship in New York, 3 months at Pratt, honing my craft. Excitement warred with fear. Distance, that old foe. "Go," Richard urged, packing my bag. "Shine. I'll hold the fort." Separation sharpened longing. Daily FaceTimes. Care packages of Seattle salmon and his flannel-scented notes. But midway, Temptation whispered. A charming curator at a gallery opening. Flirtations veiled as art talk. I rebuffed, but guilt gnawed, confessing in a midnight call. Richard's pause stretched, then softened. Proud, you told me. That's the win. His trust, unfractured, healed my slip, a role reversal, me learning grace. Return was reunion fever, airport dash, kiss devouring under terminal lights. Missed my plumber, I teased, homeward bound. Summer solidified, we mentored at a queer youth center in Capitol Hill, sharing stories of leaks and loves. Richard's Ecoline launched, hailed and wired. My exhibit at Sam drew crowds, pieces of us immortalized in canvas. Yet, humanism demands balance, joy laced with ache. Luna's illness that autumn, a tumor swift and cruel, forced us to mercy. Holding her last breath, Richard wept into my shoulder. Life's too damn fragile. We grieved together, walked slower, but emerged advocating for rescues, turning pain to purpose. By decade's end, our story ripened. A decade of floods navigated, betrayals bridged. One eve, as fireworks lit the sound for the 4th, Richard turned to me on our deck. 10 years. Still surprised me. I smiled, hand over his. Best leak ever. In America's heartland of reinvention, from rainy coasts to resilient souls, love endures not despite the breaks, but because of them. Ours, a testament, plumbed deep, flowing eternal. The 2030s dawned with a vigor that mirrored our stride. Seattle evolving, electric ferries zipping the sound, our neighborhood greening with community gardens where Richard volunteered his skills, teaching kids to solder rain barrels. At 42, I felt seasoned, my 3rd book a bestseller, tours taking me cross-country but always circling home. Richard, pushing 45, traded some fieldwork for consulting, his beard silver-flecked, laugh lines etching charm. Life's conflicts, though, are chronic flares not finales. Emily's call shattered a June morning. Her husband, in a car wreck, comatose. Come. He might not. We flew standby, landing in Tacoma's haze, hospital fluorescence harsh as judgment. Vigil hours blurred, Richard pacing corridors, me holding Emily's hand as monitors beeped dirge. The man, Tom, a burly teacher with a penchant for bad puns, rallied, but the scare unearthed family fractures. Emily confessed over vending machine coffee. Tom's folks are conservative. They blame my lifestyle influence on Rich for the curse of our family woes. Rage simmered, but Richard diffused, visiting Tom's parents with me in tow. Their home, a tidy split level, reeked of pot roast and prejudice. We pray for healing, Tom's mom said, eyes averted from our linked hands. And guidance for wayward paths. Richard's response was measured steel. Our paths led us here, to love your son like our own. Judge if you must, but gratitude fits better. They softened, incrementally, a nod, a shared recipe, seeds of bridge. Tom woke, rehab a grind we shared, shuttling between cities. It bonded us deeper, Richard's caregiving a revelation, gentle with wounds, steadfast in weights. You're my rock, Emily said, hugging him fierce. Both of you, back home. The strain surfaced. Richard dove into work, overcommitting to a massive eco-project for the port, deadlines crushing, tempers fraying. One night, argument ignited over forgotten anniversary dinner. My fault, tour lag, his. Exhaustion. You bail. I break. He snapped, door slamming to the deck. I followed, rain soaking us. We're both breaking. Talk. Don't bolt. Confession poured. The vigil had triggered Captain Ghost's fear of loss paralyzing. What if I lose you next? To some East Coast gallery? I cupped his face. Water streaming. Then you fight. Like now. We mended under downpour. Kisses salt and renewal. Vowing check-ins amid chaos. Climax crested that fall. Project Crunch coinciding with my book launch in San Francisco. Richard begged off. Too slammed. But isolation gnawed. I partied solo. A fan's advance turning tipsy flirt. No lines crossed. But the echo of temptation confessed in a hotel call. Silence stretched oceanic. David. Hurt laced his tone. Trust quivering. I'm home tomorrow. We fixed this. Return was reckoning. Airport silence. Home unpacked in taut quiet. It's not the flirt, he said finally. Over whiskey by fire. It's the pattern. Us pulling away when scared. I did it with Mark. You're doing it with distance. Tears mutual. We stripped bare. My fear of stagnation. His of abandonment. Betrayal's not the act, I admitted. It's the secrecy. Therapy reignited. Tools sharpened. Date nights mandatory. Vulnerability journals shared. Resolution bloomed winterward. The Port Project won awards. Richard keynoting at a sustainability summit. Me beside him, sketching live. Emily's family healed. Tom's folks attending a holiday dinner. Toasting to unexpected kin. Spring 2032 brought surprise. Richard's vasectomy reversal. A whim turned wish. Kids? With you. We'd discussed surrogacy. Adoption now. Possibilities sparked. Clinics consulted. Emily offering as carrier. Her grin wicked. Anti-surrogate? Hell yes. But paths diverge. Tests revealed hurdles. Richard's Navy exposures lingering. My age ticking. Heartache crested. A quiet betrayal of biology. We wanted this, he mourned, holding ultrasound ghosts. Family's not blood, I countered. Luna proved that. Foster. Maybe, or just us. Enough. We pivoted. Fostering teens from the youth center. First a shy artist named Kai. 16 and questioning. His arrival was chaos. Midnight talks. Art supplies exploding. Richard teaching him to fix bikes as metaphor for self-repair. Kai's integration tested, runaway scare. School fights, but triumphs shown. His coming out, our pride march as unit. You guys fixed me, he said. Hug fierce. Summer deepened bonds. Camping in the Cascades, stars canopy. Stories shared around fire. Richard's whisper in dark. This is legacy. Better than blood. Fall harvested growth. Kai's adoption papers signed. Our family 3. My 4th book dedicated to him. Richard's firm expanding mentorships. Yet, humanism tempers triumph. Losses lace wins. Emily's 2nd pregnancy. Joy shadowed by Tom's relapse scare. Kai's biofamily outreach. Boundaries navigated. One November eve. As leaves swirled, Richard pulled me to the deck. Surprised yet. Every day, I grinned, kissing him slow. Best pipe dream. In America's mosaic, diverse, durable, our narrative persists. Conflicts conduits to connection. Betrayals bridges to deeper love. Flow on. Unbroken. Decade turned to legacy. The 2040s, a canvas of culmination. At 52, my hair threaded silver, illustrations gracing museums from MoMA to Sam. Richard, 55, Hale and Hart, a regional powerhouse, consulting nationwide on resilient infrastructure, piping cities against climate's wrath. Kai, now 24, thrived at Cornish College, his murals dotting Seattle's alleys, a queer icon in bloom. Our home, expanded to include Kai's loft, hummed with life, dinners raucous, Luna's successor, a collie named Anchor, underfoot. But time's tide pulls inexorable. Conflicts evolve, subtler but seismic. Emily's passing came swift, aneurysm at 58, leaving Tom adrift, her brood orphaned in grief. Funeral in Tacoma, rain biblical, Richard eulogizing. She bridged us all, mending what words couldn't. Back home, he withdrew, tools idle, eyes distant. It's her, he confessed one dawn, coffee cooling. The fixer gone. Who am I without that? I held him, words bomb. You're the bridge now. For Tom, the kids for us. He rallied, stepping in, weekends with nieces and nephews, teaching them knots and stories. But strain surfaced, arguments over his overreach, my book's demanding tour. You're fading, I accused, voice sharp. You're jetting, he countered. Who anchors who? Climax brewed mid-decade. A storm named doubt. Richard's firm faced audit. Shoddy subcontract from Apex remnants. Fraud whispers. Stress peaked. Him snapping at Kai over curfew. Me retreating to studio. Betrayal brewed internal. Richard, unraveling, sought solace in old NA meetings, Navy alumni, Mark among ghosts. No affair, but lunches for closure, secrecy a chasm. Discovery via shared calendar, innocent ping, gut punch. Confrontation exploded. Mark again? After everything. It was talk, stress relief. Not. Trusts the relief. I roared, packing a bag. I'm out. He blocked the door, tears streaming. Don't. I sabotaged again. Punish me, but stay. I did, but space demanded week at a Belltown Airbnb. Therapy solo. Revelations. His grief masked depression. Unaddressed. Emily was my mirror, he journaled. Shared raw. Losing her. I lost self. Return was ritual. Couples retreat in the San Juans. Kayaks cutting silence to speech. Forgive my leak, he vowed. I'll damn the doubts. We did. Meds and mindfulness his toolkit. Firm salvaged through transparency. Resolution ripened. Kai's wedding to his partner. Alex. On our deck. Vows echoing ours. Richard walking him down. My toast. Love's the ultimate fix. Later years gifted grace. Grandkids via Kai. Tots clambering tools and easels. Richard's retirement keynote. Honoring the man who plumbed my heart. My final exhibit. Floodgates. A life's work. 60s brought frailty. Richard's knee surgery. My vision blurring. But joys persisted. Sound cruises. Hands clasped. Volunteer trips to Tacoma youth. Sharing legacies. On our 35th anniversary. Ferry chugging dusk. He knelt anew. Not ring, but letter. His words. You surprised me then. Sustain me now. Forever fixed. Tears mingled with spray. I, Captain, in America's enduring epic, from flooded baths to full lives. Our tale closes not with period, but ellipsis. Emotions ebb, romances renew, humanity in the human. What happened after? Everything, and nothing less.